Hello, everybody. We're back. I'm going to let everybody just trickle in. I can see some people still kind of connecting. So a couple more seconds, we'll let everybody get connected, and then we're going to jump right in. I'm really excited for this one. I don't want to overcomplicate too much, so I have tried to design this one to be really straightforward. We're going to speak more to process when it comes to the integrations. And then as any questions come in, I'm always happy to answer them. So structure of these, since we're still letting some people connect, I like to run through a pretty informative deck, and then I will jump kind of in and out of the platform to show where the things are that I'm talking about. That'll be an excellent time to ask questions. I've got both the Q&A and the webinar chat open. So with that, I think we're all here. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me today. For those who aren't familiar, we are GReminders. We're an online scheduling, reminders, and automation platform built for advisors. Our main goals are to limit human error, streamline and increase productivity, and of course, reduce no-shows in your practice. My name is Ziera Burkett. I'm the Partner Relationship Manager with GReminders. A little background on me. I also come from the financial services industry. I was a marketing director for a number of years. So I'm very familiar with a lot of the pain points advisors and operations teams are experiencing when it comes to scheduling and follow-up. I have built many advisory CRM databases across multiple platforms like Redtail, Wealthbox, and HubSpot, really just helping advisors to keep clean data within their CRM and organize their operational processes along the way. So welcome to the second part of Mastering GReminders series. Today, we're going to be talking about all things integration. Our three main integrations that we'll be kind of deep diving in, or that I'll be talking about the most, are the Redtail, Wealthbox, and PreciseFP. I mentioned this last week, but GReminders is unique in that it completely automates processes that would otherwise be so extensive, it'd be necessary to whiteboard them out and then build them into an elaborate workflow. So last week we applied that to scheduling, reminders, and calendar management. But this week we're going to deep dive into how that affects your workflows and processes. Now I'll do a quick overview of Redtail, Wealthbox, and PreciseFP and what each integration does, or where those apply to different parts of the platform. We'll venture into use cases and where these integrations fit best into your existing processes as we go through them. We will review the integrations page. I'll point out a few other integrations you may not have known about, like offering your video conferencing platforms as meeting locations, or using Stripe or Square if you are collecting payments. So with that, let's jump right in. This is overwhelming. I don't want anybody to worry. I did mention this last week, but for those of you that are new and didn't catch part one, I have created this deck to be more of a resource post-webinar. So it's a way to keep me honest. I want to make sure I touch on these things, but don't feel like you have to consume all of this while I'm talking. I think that's probably pretty impossible. So don't worry about consuming all of this right now. This is actually going to be sent out with the webinar replay, so that way you have this as a reference and resource post this webinar. So jumping right in, where is the benefit? GReminders operates directly with Redtail and Wealthbox at an organizational level. We talked about this in part one, GReminders being this background tool. Let's focus on the integrations with your CRM. Whether clients book through GReminders or you schedule an event manually on your work calendar, you'll see that working within your CRM rather than another piece of tech you have to live out of. So you're going to see a few things happen once you build out your platform and utilize the CRM integration. What do each CRMs do, Redtail and Wealthbox? So in both, we're adding contacts and updating existing contact information. We are launching workflows. We have the ability to create opportunities within your CRM when your meetings are scheduled. In Redtail, you can automatically kick off activity templates similar to workflows You'll also be able to collect information on your scheduling forms and have that information right back to UDFs, or those user-defined fields. When a prospect schedules with you, you'll be able to set the status and category for that prospect when we add them to the CRM. When someone reschedules a meeting originally booked through a GReminders link, we can recognize any workflows or opportunities created and adjust the dates of those opportunities and set an activity in Redtail to review the workflow so you can adjust the date that your steps are due. Now, in Wealthbox, you have the ability to create households in addition to contacts when a new prospect schedules with you. Similar to Redtail, information collected on your scheduling forms will write back to Wealthbox custom fields so you can keep accurate data. Also similar to Redtail, when someone reschedules a meeting originally booked through a GReminders link, we can recognize the workflows or opportunities created and adjust the dates of those to reflect the changes made to the rescheduled meeting. This is a lot. I'm going to go into the platform in just a second and kind of show where that lives. I think it's a bit more digestible when you can see how easy these things are, and they're a bit more straightforward than me just sort of explaining it. But all of this is really a testament to using the sidebar for your manual scheduling, which we touched on at the end of part 1. We talked about using the booking links in your sidebar to manually schedule your meetings to keep yourself honest and your calendar manageable. But also a great reason for this is these changes to workflow dates and opportunity dates can remain consistent. So if the meeting was scheduled through a GReminders booking link, we can see what was launched against it. So this is really just an added benefit to keeping those processes fully automated. It's not just to keep your calendar clean, it's also to make sure that all those back-end processes that we're kicking off can also be updated later in the event that the meeting may have to be rescheduled. So like I said, I'm going to pop into the platform and show where these items live and what it looks like on the CRM side when things are launched. While we're walking through this, it's important to think about your existing processes surrounding meetings. We kind of talked about this whenever we were saying we need to be whiteboarding what the process is leading up to a meeting, what each meeting looks like, and then any follow-up processes. So which meetings require a prep process that could or should be defined in a workflow? What meetings need an opportunity to be created when they are scheduled? For Redtail users, do you have any applicable activity templates to define actionable items? What information do you want to collect? And of that information, what needs to be put in the CRM? So let's jump over to the integration settings. I'm going to look at Redtail integration settings and Wealthbox integration settings. And then I'll also kind of pop into an event type that we built out last time. And I'll kind of show where we're launching those activity templates, the workflows, things of that nature. So with that, okay. So whenever we are in GReminders, we're going to navigate to the left-hand toolbar under org settings and go to integrations. Here you're going to see all of the integrations that you have connected and then all of the ones available to you on an organizational level. For the purpose of this, let's run through Redtail first. When we were in our setup options, the first thing we're going to be met with are what activity types are we syncing to GReminders? So let's speak directly to Redtail calendar users. What activity types do I want to see to check my availability and also send reminders against? So best practice tip of the day so far. I don't want to sync activity types that are my to-dos, or anything that is maybe potentially inner office, that's personal to me, that doesn't take up time on my calendar. So anything that I have listed as a task, or if I have a type that says to do or get done, I've seen it outlined a million different ways. But if this is an actual task you need to take care of and not an appointment on your calendar, don't sync it as an activity type. And the main reason for that is, one, it'll force you to hold yourself accountable by saying, I need to put this in and identify it correctly, not just putting it in as general information and leaving those. It's always important to put type and category, but also to make sure that our calendar is clean and I'm not sending reminders against my to-dos. So think about if your client, typically for to-do items, we have, or task items, we have contacts synced to those. So that way we can make sure that those accounts are being serviced on the back end. I don't want to send them a 24-hour SMS reminder saying move money for Jen. She is going to have no idea what that means. She's going to ask you, what is that? I'll also touch on, whenever it comes to reminders, invite details in the event type, because we also want to make sure that our clients and prospects are not receiving all of the note updates and activity description, any changes made to the activities, those Redtail notifications that you get that I feel like most of us turn off. We want to make sure our clients don't receive those either. So with that, first best practice tip here is to make sure that any activity type that has to do with action and not with appointment, don't sync it, just toggle it off. Moving on, I ask you don't finagle with these activity types and categories. This is just going to make sure that every time you add a new activity type or category, it gets updated into GReminders, so that way it becomes available on that dropdown, which I will run over again. We did talk about it a bit in part one, but I want to touch on it secondarily now that we're really speaking to the Redtail integration. Okay, contact matching options. So we have for phone numbers and emails. This is going to be priority on how you want us to notify your clients through reminders. So whenever we are looking into the contact to find a phone number for an SMS reminder, what order do you want us to go in? This is how you'll set that up. They're very easy drag and drop options. If you have things labeled as primary over preferred, you can elect to have that show first. But you can move these around. It's very simple. You can take some of these off to not even recognize them at all. Same thing with email. So if you have multiple emails on a contact card, you can set the order in which you want us to look for those, and then the first one that we find. So if on a contact you've got 3 emails, but none of them are labeled preferred, but one of them are labeled primary, we'll speak to the primary one in this order, or whichever fashion you have this outlined. Automatically create a new contact if a new meeting is booked via GReminders. So we talked about this in part 1, but GReminders has the ability to create new contacts when new meetings or when prospects schedule through your meeting links. If we find the contact does not exist in your CRM, we'll create a new one for you. But this is how you can toggle that on and off. Some people do an extensive amount of outreach and marketing, and every person that they collect information on, maybe they don't want in their CRM. Personally, for me, I used to work for an annuity advisor. We had one heck of a marketing budget, so we were constantly doing outreach. The only reason why I would suggest keeping this toggled on, whether you do a million dinner seminars, a million client referral events, or none of those, and do only maybe educational, very pointed seminars, is because later you'll be able to drip on those people. Even if they don't convert, you still can create a drip system. You can still reach out to that, and it's essentially free marketing, right? You're not having to pay for those mailer lists. Any amount of information that they've sent you when they've scheduled, it will be captured into your CRM. So it's really just an excellent way to data collect in that regard. So I recommend leaving it toggled on, but it's really just how you want information to land in your CRM. With that, you can set the status and category to those new contacts. So in addition to all of that contact information being copied into your CRM or moved over, you can also assign the status and category, which really from a clean CRM perspective, just allows me the ability to find these people easier in an advanced search and drip on them or update in bulk information that I maybe wouldn't obviously have off the bat. Notification and reminder right back. Best practice is to leave this on. So the reason why we want to create a note against matching a contact is because all of the reminders for all of the reminders sent out from GReminders will be written back to the contact card via a note. So anytime an SMS is sent out, who it's sent to, what the number was that it was sent from and to whom, and then the message that was relayed in there will be written back to the notes section. This is just really great from a historical timeline perspective. As an advisor or operations team member, you'll be able to jump into that contact card and see the last correspondence between your office and that contact. So it's really just a great way to see where you left off. Syncing contacts. So I don't want to give too much away here. I know I keep teasing it, but in part 3, we're going to talk about client automation. So syncing your contacts is important for that because you'll be able to take advantage of our bulk send tool. So whenever we talk about automating the annual review process and I sort of talked about this in part 1, being able to automatically send out meeting requests for upcoming annual reviews based on contact criteria. This is how you'll be able to enable that. We want to make sure that this stays toggled on, and then how you have the owner of that contact defined in your CRM, whether it be servicing advisor, writing advisor, or who it was added by. That's how you'll discern that there, and that's important. We'll touch on that another time. Last but not least, mapping fields. So whenever we went over building out an event type in part 1, we came to the section informed questions. And in there was a few custom questions, like what is your favorite drink? Or, do you have any hobbies? What's your preferred way to receive documents or sign documents? This is kind of where you'll figure out how you want us to interact with your CRM in terms of updating contact information and then also inputting or updating those user-defined fields. So a couple examples that I want to give here that I think maybe some people don't always think about. The first one being, generally, I want to collect information and I want to make sure that I have the most accurate information, not just hoarding a bunch of information and crossing my fingers that when I pull that list, it's going to be accurate. You'll do this by a couple different ways. How you want us to update the field. So you have a drop down of exactly all 3 reasons or all 3 ways that we can update existing information. If it's blank, not at all, or overwriting the existing value. I think there are specific use cases where both overwriting the existing value and only if it's blank are applicable. So for instance, if it's something that would seem rolling, like on an introductory appointment, maybe their veteran status is active duty. But eventually, with veteran status that is subject to change. So I want to label that as only overriding the existing value, because maybe on the introductory appointment, they were active duty, but by the time they have their annual review, now they're retired or they're non-active duty. So that's important to kind of try to have the foresight to think about how is this information subject to change later. But then there are other things that maybe don't make sense. I only want to update that if it's blank, meaning I don't have the information. So this could be contact information, which typically that will be updated and taken in whenever we are creating contacts and that sort of thing when people are scheduling with us. But for existing contacts, do I only want to update this if it's blank? Probably if I didn't have their phone number before. Same thing if I had other contact information, contact details here. The other use case I want to give to this is from a Redtail perspective, think about the automations we have available to us. When there is a change to the address section of the contact card in Redtail, we have the ability to automate a workflow be launched from that, which is typically our address change workflow. I think that's pretty unanimous across most advisors. So a really neat thing here that GReminders can work in tandem with the existing tools in your CRM is if we have our address overwrite the existing value. So what that looks like to me is I have a client and I see them once a year for an annual review. They're a super easy client. They check in with me when they want, occasionally, but for the most part, I see them once a year. I think clients in general are pretty notorious. If they aren't calling us to liquidate funds to buy a home, then we are sometimes the last to know that they've even moved. And when you're changing an address or when they move and you have to then kick off that workflow, there's a lot of areas that we need to update that information. With GReminders and overwriting their existing address, it's time for their annual review. They schedule with me. They put their new address on the form that I ask whenever I'm collecting that address. They put a new address there. So then what happens is that overwrites the existing address on their contact card. Well, then that triggers the Redtail automation that there's been a change made to that address field. And now that address change workflow has kicked off the day that they set the meeting. So instead of them coming to the annual review, me verifying, hey, is all of this information correct? They see that their address has then changed. They let me know. And then post the annual review is whenever I'm making all of those changes to the accounts. Well, instead, 2 weeks ago, they scheduled their annual review for 2 weeks later. So whenever I get them in front of me, I now have completed the address change workflow. I have all the new documents that they need to sign and verify within that annual review. So really, this is just going to give me the ability to be more prepared for my meeting going into it. So I always love kind of bringing that up because I think it's just such a pointed use case for advisors whenever it comes to automating. So that's how you'll map fields. Now, let's jump into an event type. So I can kind of show you where some of these things are that we're talking about. So in our event type templates, we saw these in part 1. Let's do an annual review meeting. And let's look at the first thing to be meeting type and meeting category. So this points again to utilizing the sidebar to schedule manually. I said this before, you'll make sure these types and categories are filled in. So why is this important? This is how you'll pull accurate information within your CRM. So maybe you need to know how many appointments a certain advisor did. This is an activity report you can pull in Redtail. Maybe you're searching for an advisor's note that had to do with a specific meeting they held a few weeks ago. This is now easily findable because the notes and activities were categorized appropriately. So what you'll do in the template is assign what this annual review is. So if I had my annual review type, or maybe I want to say best practice here for type would be something like appointment, or it would be the type of appointment like Zoom, phone call, and then my category would be what the meeting actually is, right? Because if we remember in Redtail, category for activity, note, workflow, those are all the same list. And that's going to be how we pull troves of information to make sure we see all of the activities, notes, and workflows associated with annual reviews, with discovery meetings, with statement reviews. So this is just a really great way to keep data clean, I recommend. But these meeting type and meeting category will speak to Redtail activity type and activity category. These, when you integrate your CRM, these lists will auto-populate based on the meeting types and categories you have in your CRM already. Okay, form questions. And this is for both Redtail and Wealthbox, and I'll jump into Wealthbox's integration settings in just a moment. But the mapping is exactly the same. So I just wanted to touch on the form questions. UDFs and custom fields, this is how you're going to map those. So for our first name, last name, email, phone number, this is pretty typical information when we're scheduling. For an annual review, they're already our client. So I don't see the need in using post-scheduled questions, which we talked about in part 1. However, I do see the need for those on an introductory or an initial consultation because we don't want to scare away our prospect by asking them a bunch of information. Post-scheduled questions are really meant to be optional. But I really need to know if my client has experienced any of the following changes: an address change, beneficiary update, new accounts, charitable giving, familial death. They'll be able to select all of these when they're scheduling. Are they currently collecting Social Security? Are they currently a Medicare recipient? What is their veteran status? So this is where I was speaking previously about how we want to update the information. So what you collect is endless. If you want as much information in the UDFs as possible, well, this is an excellent place to do that, especially for an annual review meeting. But you decide how you want this information. Maybe not everything here needs to be mapped back to the contact, but I do want to have it in my confirmation email that I receive as an advisor saying, this person just scheduled with you. Here's the answers to all of their questions. So this is where you'll set up the information on those fields being mapped back. For Redtail users also specifically, let's look at invite details. So I mentioned including the invitee as an attendee on a calendar event. So if you were to do this, they will also, and you use the Redtail calendar, they will also receive all of the Redtail notifications of when an action is taken on that activity. So we don't want that. We don't want them to receive the same Redtail notifications that I receive as an advisor when I make changes or when someone else within my organization makes changes to that activity. That can be super confusing. They'll have, your client or your prospect will have no idea what that is. And also that's where inner office notes go. So that could be a hairy situation. So just leave this by default. When you integrate your CRM, this will be unchecked. So just make sure that that stays unchecked. And then lastly, the workflows and automation side. So let's speak only to Redtail for just a minute, but this is where you're going to decide what Redtail workflow templates and activity templates and opportunities are launched against meetings. So for an annual review, I obviously would like to launch my client review, and maybe I have an activity template in here for that, perhaps for like a conference call. Maybe this is a conference call and I have an activity template for that. You can launch as many workflows, as many activity templates as you'd like. This way, this is also where you'll kick off your opportunities. Creating an opportunity looks a little bit different. So when you select this, a pop-up. This is how you're going to template those opportunities when you create them. And then this is how it will be fed into your opportunity tracker. So for the sake of this, let's call this a new business meeting with an existing client. I want their first name, last name, and most likely for a new business meeting, my event type is going to be called new business. So I want that to be here. I'll put maybe in the description something regarding new business if that's necessary. What type, is it new or is it existing? And then what my source is, if that's necessary. Meaning you're using this booking link for something really specific like post seminar. I have a couple different sources here. Post seminar, if it's from a mailer, but this source list will populate from your CRM. The stage, I would leave this because it's templated. And then any next steps, this is a free form field you can type in here, same way that you can in Redtail. If you have, this information should stay as it is, and then target close date if that's necessary. So these are your own projections, and then you'll save that. And now every time somebody uses this meeting link, that opportunity will be created for them, to which point you can go in to the opportunity and update any of that other necessary information that can't necessarily be templated. Now, let's run back to integration so I can show you just how similar the setup options are for Wealthbox, and then we can kind of speak to Wealthbox. Now, contact matching options, similar to Redtail, exactly the same. You decide in what order you want us to be sending reminders to phone numbers or to emails. So if you have multiple emails on the contact card, multiple phone numbers, depending on the order you put these in, we can address those. For households, I think that this is an excellent feature, but I think by default, it usually has all of these on here. What this means is whenever you're linking households to events instead of contacts, what members of the households need to be linked to that event? I think across the board, head of household, spouse, and maybe partner, because not everybody has a spouse associated with them. Maybe they just have a partner. That way you have your two automatically if you're linking the household to all of your events. Because I don't think that for an annual review, the grandchild needs to receive any of that information or beyond those meetings. I do see, obviously, there are nuanced use cases. For instance, when we have maybe new business, existing business, or beneficiary meetings or generational wealth planning meetings where those kids or grandchildren might need to be on them, but that should be something that's manually added and probably not blanketed across the platform. So this is how you'll set that up to make sure that any household members that are applicable and how you have them defined in your CRM can be added to those events. Automatically create a contact in Wealthbox when a new meeting is booked. Same with Redtail. Do you want to do that? I say yes. I think it's an excellent idea. You capture as much information as possible. What you do with it later is really up to you, but information is power, so why not keep it? Notification and reminder write back. So create a note automatically when we match a contact for our reminders. And then this is also how you can toggle on and off creating a household and linking the contact. So what you can do with Wealthbox that's a bit different than Redtail, simply because households in Redtail are different than households in Wealthbox. When a new contact is added, you can automatically create a household for that person and then link the contact information to that. Interestingly enough, and what I'll be talking about in just a minute with PreciseFP, is that actually came from an existing PreciseFP user's ask, since for those of you that do use PreciseFP know that in order to import information from PreciseFP back to Wealthbox, you have to have households outlined. And so we really created that originally as a solution for that. So that way people could create households automatically, and then whenever they're collecting their information with PreciseFP, they don't necessarily have to go in, make sure the household's created. Instead, it was already sort of done for them. Syncing event categories, leave this toggled on in the same way we asked with Redtail, so that way as those categories get updated, they're also updated on GReminders side as well. Syncing contacts, this points to bulk send again. I'm not going to go into too much of it, but leave this toggled on. We'll talk about it a little bit more heavily in part 3. I did mean to say, and I'm not sure if I said it, primary contact owner field for this auto-populates when you sync your CRM. So you won't have to go in and automatically add this. You'll just select, it'll auto-populate for you. And then mapping those fields looks exactly the same. You have a GReminders field name. So I'm not sure. I don't think I have coffee, but okay, I have Social Security. So I would put my Social Security GReminders field name to my Social Security custom field in Wealthbox, and I want that to overwrite any existing value. So you'll set it up exactly the same, and this is how information will map back to the CRM. Now, to jump back into our event type template on our annual review meeting, in the same ways that we touched on workflows and automations in Redtail, it looks exactly the same for Wealthbox. So you'll see Wealthbox workflow templates, and you'll be able to kick these off, however many, when somebody schedules. So current Wealthbox users, you have no automations within the Wealthbox CRM. You are manually launching all of your workflows, or hoping that you remember to do so. Now with GReminders, you won't have to worry about that. You can automatically kick them off in the same way that Redtail users are able to do that. Same thing with opportunities. Wealthbox opportunities comes up with all of the fields within a Wealthbox opportunity. So that way you can have this automatically populate into your opportunity tracker in Wealthbox. So same thing, you'll have your different stages. This is where you can get a bit more unique, the probability, set your amounts, the type, and then your target date to close. So it's a little bit different than what Redtail offers, but you'll be able to template that and then the same. Okay. I didn't see too many questions come in regarding the CRM and the integration with GReminders. I'll hold it open for just a minute while I navigate back, but I do just want to show you what some of these things look like on the CRM side if you don't know. So in Wealthbox, when things begin kicking off, if I'm in a contact card, they come in just as any other appointment you're putting on your calendar if you've got that synced. It comes in as an event. You can see how they answered the questions. So that's printed right into the contact feed. And you'll have basically an entire timeline of every time they've scheduled with you and what they received for that. and of course, any custom questions that they answered along the way. Same thing with any applicable workflows. So if I have workflows opened or launching when people are scheduling with me, I'll see those kicking off as I'm scheduling my meetings. It all happens relatively instantaneously. And then of course, any reminders sent out will also be added into the contact. Same thing with Redtail. When I have my meetings are being scheduled, they come in as activities if I'm utilizing the Redtail activity, or I'm using the Redtail calendar. My user-defined field values will be listed into here. And then of course, any workflows that were launched against that meeting will, the tasks will immediately start being assigned. So everything, I like to point out this is what it looks like, but it doesn't look any different than if you were in there manually doing all of these things. I have a question. Does the household filter run for email contacts in Redtail? So the households, when we're talking about our integrations, households and creating households is applicable to Wealthbox only. We don't create households in Redtail since households in Redtail are here. With Wealthbox, the nuanced difference there is that they look similar to contacts. So they're a feed in the same way that individual contacts are. So that's why they operate a bit differently. So with Redtail, we don't create a household. It's only within Wealthbox. Okay, so with that, let's jump back into our deck, and then we're going to speak to the PreciseFP integration. So similar to how we kick off our workflows and automations in Redtail and Wealthbox, we can launch engagements within PreciseFP. So there are two ways that this integration works, and it's entirely dependent on the meeting or your firm's processes. So on the GReminders side, meaning we're integrating PreciseFP with GReminders, you'll be able to kick off PreciseFP engagements when a client or prospect schedules with you. So think about our introductory meetings or our initial consultations. We typically want to collect information, and a template within PreciseFP is, maybe something like introductory questionnaire. Let's say my initial consultation link is on my website, or it's given out during a seminar. When that prospect schedules with me, I then want them to receive an email with my introductory questionnaire. I've outlined that in my event type build out, which I'll go back into the event type build out and show you. This now enables the ability to not have to send these engagements manually. Now on the PreciseFP side, I'm logged into PreciseFP. Let's say the process looks different for that same meeting type. So before they schedule with me, my process is to send prospects an introductory questionnaire. And then once it's completed, then I want them to schedule the introductory meeting. So it really just depends on what your process is and the meeting type, because this could look very different for an annual review. You'll most likely schedule a meeting with an annual review and then send them a form to collect information or updated information via, the annual review engagements in PreciseFP. So to show you kind of what that looks like, in our event type templates, we'll go back to an annual review, or maybe I should have done an initial consultation, but down at the bottom where we are selecting our workflow templates, you're going to find your PreciseFP form templates. So if you have this is per advisor. So if your advisor has financial consultation, financial fact finder, whatever templates you have in your PreciseFP organization, these will populate here for you to launch against. And again, it's however many or however few you'd like to launch. So it's really just a way to streamline and automate some of that information collecting. Okay. Let's see. Now, last but not least, We do integrate with the most popular video conferencing platforms like Zoom, Google Meet, and Skype. So if you're collecting payments for meetings, you can set up Stripe or Square to do so through each individual meeting type. We also integrate with VoIP Office phone systems like Intulse, so you can use their tools and platforms with ours to make meeting locations easier for your clients to choose from. Specifically with Intulse, you have the ability to use their service. They have a video conferencing service as well. So this is really just a way to use those services as other meeting locations, which if we remember in our event type build out up here, our meeting locations are here. So anything you integrate, you have a trove of integrations available to you. Those locations will pop here and you can offer your Zoom, Google Meet, Skype, any of those, and that meeting link will populate for your advisor automatically just to make that a lot easier. Okay, so with that, I didn't see too many. Tabitha, I do see your other question. I'm gonna send you an email about this since it's pretty pointed specifically. But with that, I think we're gonna wrap. I think that's the end. If I don't have any other questions regarding integrations, please definitely don't miss next week. We're going to talk all things customization. So I think we've really laid the groundwork here for building our meetings and our reminders. We've taken a deep dive into CRM integration. Next week is going to be about taking all of this and then tailoring GReminders to your practice. So we're going to talk about the client automation. I know I've been teasing it the last 2 weeks. That's our bulk send. We're going to talk routing forms, which we touched on a little bit in part 1. We are going to talk about all those custom variables. So all those form questions and how they're built, how we're asking them, what are they? Are they a Medicare recipient? Are they collecting Social Security? I'm going to show you how to set those up for each event so that way you don't have to type those out every single time. And then really show you how to get granular and use variables. So I mentioned all of those things in part 1 and 2. So I'm hoping I laid enough of a groundwork so that way we are ready and we're coming prepared. So as I said before, by the end of this series, you'll be able to leave with recordings of each of these webinars, the decks that went along with them, and then also a PDF best practice guide, everything we talked about and more with GReminders tips throughout and just a total walkthrough of our platform. I'm also going to put the registration link in the chat for part 3, so that way you can join us. In the meantime, please feel free to catch up on part 1 if you haven't already by going to greminders.com/events. Thank you guys again for joining me. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys got a decent amount out of this, and I'm really excited for next week because I think that's whenever we can really get into the nitty-gritty of what is best practice for your firm. So thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day. Tabitha, I didn't forget about you. I'm gonna send you an email right after this. We can chat then. So have a great rest of your day, everybody, and I'll see you next Thursday.